Shalom, and welcome to a new series on the Hebrew alphabet. The Hebrew alphabet is very, very special, and let's jump straight into it. You know, when we talk about different letters, different languages, Hebrew is different to all languages. And if you look at this presentation that I've prepared, the first thing that I ask is, why is this language different from all other languages? All speech is important. All speech has a lot of power. Okay, we know that sometimes you can achieve a lot more through talking than you can by actions. You're getting other people roused up, cause them to do more things than if you physically do it yourself. We know that speech can also hurt. You can make somebody happy, or you can destroy somebody's life by just saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. So all speech has the power. But if we look, it's even more than that. Because what we've implied here is that speech has its power indirectly. It causes actions to happen afterwards, which is true. But if we look at Bereshit, beginning of the Torah, it says, Vayomer Elohim yehi or, vayi or. Hashem said, let there be light, and there was light. As we say also in the davening every day in the introduction to Pesach Zimra, Baruch Shama vayala. Hashem just said, and the world was created. So we see that speech, some kind of speech, has the power of creation directly, not just indirectly. Now we carry on, and we get through the creation of all the different, the world, the sun and the earth, etc., etc. And then we finally get to the peak of the creation of man and woman. And after man and woman are created, they're actually created, joined together back to back, according to the rabbis. And when Hashem separated them, it wasn't a rib, it was actually separating these two halves of man and woman, allowing them to meet each other front to front. And he gave a mitzvah for them to join together. And the name that he gave to woman was Isha. And the reason is because she came from the Ish, from the man. And that's what it says over here in the verse that I've quoted. Lezot yikare Isha. She may be called woman. Kim Ish lukachazot. She was taken from the man. Ish, Isha. So the rabbis taught from this, conclude from this, Rashi brings it in his commentary on the Torah, that from here we see that the world was created in Hebrew, because the names given were taken out from the Hebrew language, Ish and Isha. So when we say that speech has the power of creation, it's not just any speech. It's dafka, the speech in the Hebrew language. So this language is very, very special. And in fact, the majority of the rabbis conclude that Hebrew is not a Safa Heskemit, consensual agreed language. Now, all other languages, they say that, they looked at a dog and they said, what should we call him? Cat, animal, dog. Let's call him a dog. Okay, why not? So they agreed to call the dog a dog. In Hebrew, there's something intrinsic in the language. A dog is called a elef because there's something about the word elef that relates specifically to a dog. Some people say it's kelev. The dog's very attached to its owners, like a heart. But this is true not just for the dog, but for every word in the Hebrew language. And even more even the letters and even the vowels in the Hebrew language. So we jump onto the letters, and you can say the letters are the smallest parts of the language, the atoms, if you like. It's interesting that the word atom, I haven't seen this written anywhere, sounds a little bit like the word ot, which is a letter in Hebrew, atom ot. But what is written is that the Aramaic word to come is ata, to come, and Hebrew lavo. And that is the same root as the word ot. So the letters have the ability to bring the godly message, the spiritual message to us, as they are the foundations, the atoms of the language. So in order to just give an introduction of what is the alphabet we jump into exactly each one of the letters and how we understand them. In the English alphabet, of course, we have 26 letters. How many letters do we have in the AlephBet, in the Hebrew alphabet? First response for people who know it would probably say 22, and these are them here, right? The AlephBet Gimel Dalet. Intentionally, I did it with the font of the that's used in the Torah in the script. It's called the Stam, software Stam. And there are 22 letters, but there are actually more than that, because 5 of the letters, known as Mansepach, have a different shape, even though they're the same sound, if they appear at the end of the word. Kaf, which is the same as the kaf over here, but if it's at the end of the word, we draw it like this. The same for the mem, different to that mem, the nun, different to that nun, the pei, different to this pei, and the tzadik, different to the tzadik. Interesting that all of them, with the exception of the mem, have the same top shape, but the bottom opens up. Okay, the kaf looks the same on the top, then you stretch this bottom part out, and it becomes a long kaf. Same with the nun and the pei and the tzadik. But the mem actually is just the opposite. It actually goes more around. Here you have a little opening, and here you don't. But we see that, depending how you look at it, you can say you have 22 letters in the alphabet, or you can say you have 27. But there's actually a lot more, because this excludes the vowels. The vowels, as we know, in Hebrew is written underneath the letter, sometimes on top or on the side, but usually underneath. And this is called the nikud. And we'll get to those later on in the session today. But there are 10 different nikudot, patach, kamat, shva, etc. And these, of course, open up a myriad of possibilities of pronouncing each and every letter. Another thing that we have in the alphabet, in the AlephBet, is the gematria. I'm sure you've heard of this. This is the numerical value of each of the letters. And this is how it works. Aleph is 1. Beginning is simple, Bet is 2, Gimel is 3, all the way up to Tet is 9, and Yud is 10. But then we get an interesting twist. Kaf is not 11, but then we start going up in tens. So we have Kaf is 20, Lamed is 30, Mem is 40, and this continues till Kuf, which is 100. And then again, we get the jump to hundreds. And Resh, Shin, Taf 200, 300, and 400 respectively. Some people count the final letters, or in some instances, as a continuation of the alphabet. And then we'd have 5, 6, 7, 8, 900, which means that we get to just below 1,000. And this has significance, we'll see a little bit later today. So, what do we do with all of this? The letters, what we'll do is we'll describe the qualities of the letters in general and use the Aleph as an example. And Bezrat Hashem, in coming sessions, we'll slowly work through the rest of the alphabet. But I've listed here 5 different qualities of letters that we can look at. By the way, a lot of what I'm speaking about is covered in this book by Rav Kook called Resh Milin. He talks about the letters and then the vowels, and also the ta'amim, or the trop, the music notes that are written, not written in the Torah, but we use when we read the Torah. And even the crowns that on the letters, like if you look at here, on top of the shin, there's a crown, and some of the letters on the tzaddik here, they have these little crowns. Each of them has meaning. And another book, the book of the world of the letters, by Rabbi Dr. Munk, Rabbi Munk. It's also, I think it was originally written in English and translated to Hebrew. There's also a very good book by Rabbi Zamir Cohen on the letters. All of these are based on a little bit on the Gemara and mainly on the Zohar, on the main book of the Kabbalah. Nobody made this up. This is important because everything comes from the Soret. This is these ideas are very deep, and we need to remember that. And we're not playing games of guess games or riddles. So, what are the 5 qualities of a letter that can tell us about the letter? The first is the name. right? The word Aleph is called Aleph. The second letter is called Bet. In English, you also have names, A, B, C, but the difference is that the word A and B and C don't have any meaning. In Hebrew, all the letters, maybe with one exception, which we'll get to over time, all have a meaning. Aleph means to teach, the Aleph. Bet is a bite, is a house. Gimel can either mean a camel, gamal, or can be to gomel chesed, like a gemilut chasadim, to offer loving kindness to other people. Dalet could be a door, or could be from dal, to somebody that's lowly, somebody that's poor, and so on and so forth. The second quality is the gematria, the numerical value that we looked at on the previous slide, and obviously the numerical value of Aleph is 1. Third is the sound. Now, we don't do this in a lot of we don't really understand in a lot of the letters. Not that there isn't significance, is that we don't understand them all. But in Aleph, it's very interesting. What is the sound of Aleph? It doesn't have a sound. Some people say, it's not true. Is if it's got a kamatz or patach underneath it. Is if it's got a segol underneath it. In other words, the Aleph will take on the sound of the vowel underneath it, but adds nothing. Okay? Not like bet. If you have a patach, the sound of under the bet, it's ba. You hear the bet and you hear the In Aleph, you just hear You don't hear any addition from Aleph. So it has no sounds. I remember once one of my kids learning first time to read the alphabet, and they had to say the sound. The teacher showed them a bet, and they went ba. The gimel, they went ga. He showed them an Aleph, and they all went. That's what they were taught to do, and that's the sound of the Aleph. The next is the shape. Now, this is quite fascinating, and we will follow this in, I think, in all the letters. The Aleph, all the letters are actually made up of other letters. There's 2 basic letters, right? If we said that the letter is like the atom, maybe the protons and the neutrons are the 2 letters Yud and Vav. All their letters are actually made up of combinations of Yud and Vav, right? If you see this Aleph over here, we have a diagonal Vav, and we have a little Yud on the top, and we have an upside down Yud on the bottom. Okay, if we go back for a moment to the previous slide, and you'll see the Bet has a round Vav and another Vav. And Gimel has also a Vav and a little Yud on the bottom. So we say that all the letters are actually comprised of the letters Yud and Vav. The Vav itself is actually a long Yud. I guess the original of all the letters is the Yud. And we know that Hashem's name begins with the Yud, right? We write Yud Kei Vav Kei, that's God's name. It's the Yud. And the Maral will explain that the Yud is so small, it hints that it's got a lot of power. It's a number of 10, but it's so small we can't really comprehend it. There's a lot of power there, but it's beyond our grasp. And the final quality, number 5, is the first time there's a word that starts with the letter that we're looking at in the Torah. So we know the very first verse of the Torah is Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim et haaretz. And the third word is Elokim. And Elokim begins with an Aleph, right? The first word begins with a bet. So the first time the Aleph appears in the beginning of a letter is the word Elokim. So this is the key. This tells us that the word Aleph stands for godliness. Obviously, Elokim is God's name. And the AlephBet tells us that we start the Torah, we start the alphabet with the letter Aleph, because Hashem is the beginning of everything. And now let's use this to go a little bit further. Based on that, how do we understand all the other qualities? Well, first of all, the numerical value 1. Obviously, Hashem is one. There's only one Hashem. There's only one God. And that's why the numerical value of the Aleph is 1, because it symbolizes Hashem. The word Alef is to teach, because the Aleph, Hashem teaches us everything. Everything we know, everything we have is all learned from Hashem. And we have the commandment to learn about Hashem. And how do we do that? We learn that by learning the Torah. Interestingly enough, that there's no other religion in the world that has a commandment, a mitzvah, to learn. Some have commandments, some don't, but none have a commandment like we have a mitzvah to learn Torah. Some see it as a necessary means to understand the religion, etc., but there's no mitzvah in itself to actually learn, only in our religion. So Aleph is learning. But you could also read the word Aleph as elef, which means 1,000. But we said it's one. Well, the truth is, if you look at the world, you look at the myriad of things outside, the trees and the houses and the grass and the animals and everything there is, you see a myriad. And a myriad is symbolized by the word elef. And the reason for that is, we go back to the numbers, you remember we said that with the Mansafach, go up to 900. In other words, still 900. And if you add the bottom row, 999, you can get to all the numbers. But once you go beyond that, you need to repeat the same letter twice. And so elef is ribui, is multiplicity. And what this comes to teach us is that even though you see in the world many things, elef, 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 you must know that it all comes from the Aleph. It all comes from the one Hashem. If you look at the creation of the world, Hashem was one, and then he split between the light and day and the night, and there was two, right? There was day and night. And then he split between the heavens and the earth. And then we had four. We had heaven at the night and day, and heaven in the day, earth in the night and earth in the day. And then he split the seas and the earth. Again, we multiply by two. And then he created all the animals and split them into each type of animal, and male and female. And finally, at the epitome, what we mentioned before, even when man was created, he was one and split into two. Okay, so the whole purpose, the whole process of creation is splitting the big whole into smaller, more tangible, more digestible entities. And he takes this man and woman and separates them into two. They're the epitome of creation. What does he say? Therefore, man will leave his mother and father and cleave to his wife and become one. In other words, the mitzvah is to take this multiplicity and try see the unity. In other words, try see the echad, the Aleph in the elef. Try get back to the pre-creation conceptually. And that's why they come to teach us, the Aleph comes in the Alef to teach us that the echad is actually elef. Now we get to the shape. The shape is also fascinating. We see the little yud on the top. We mentioned already that the yud symbolizes Hashem. Hashem is very with the yud. This is Hashem that's way up the top. He's actually the Hashem of everything. But what's the upside down yud on the bottom? The upside down yud on the bottom tells us that the elef that we see around, the physical world with all its multiplicity, is actually a reflection of the yud on the top. Is actually different qualities of Hashem, different representations of Hashem, in a way that we can slowly start appreciating who Hashem is. And therefore it's upside down. In other words, you don't see Hashem, but you see the shadow of Hashem, the reflection of Hashem in this world. If you open your eyes and you realize, well, what is here? And what you have between them, you have the Vav, almost like the mechitza, the separation between the top and the bottom. Cook notices that you must note that if you're talking about Hashem, as great as he is, he only touches in that realm the bottom of the Vav. But his reflection, when we look at the godliness in the world, compared to the world we're touching the peak, the top of the Vav. So the Vav on the one hand separates, but it actually combines them, because it's the reflector. It creates the mirror image. And if you didn't have this reflection, and if you didn't make the yud smaller and upside down, we wouldn't be able to comprehend it. It's almost like strong sunglasses. Try and look at the sun. You cannot look at the sun. You damage your eyes. But if you get very, very strong glasses, because they limit the sun, you can look at the sun through them. In other words, because we're limited, we get damaged, we get hurt, we get burnt by too much exposure to too much spirituality. But if we do the tzimtzum, if we do the limitation, we can see them. I remember I once heard from Rabbi Shabtai about many years ago a very nice parable about this. He says that the old-fashioned camera, today we have all the digital cameras, the old camera that worked with film, and the light made the image on the film. So you would think the more light, the better your image you have. But we know that's not true. If you have too much light, the film gets overexposed and destroyed. So you have you have a shutter that limits the light. And because the light is limited, the film, depending on how strong, what kind of film it is, can manage to bear the light and show us the image. It's the same way. By limiting Hashem, we actually connect to Hashem. And that's why this vav is also, it's a mechitza, it separates, but through the separation, it actually brings us close to Hashem. And that's why the word vav, the in Hebrew is called and. The association in Hebrew, the name in Hebrew is called vav hachibur, the vav that connects. Okay, when you say hu halach v'hakelev halach, and the dog went with him, the vav is the chibur, and that's what the vav does over here. It's interesting also in Hebrew, when you connect a nail or something to the wall to hang a picture, it's also called a vav, the little thing that sticks out of the wall that you hang your picture on. Why? Because it connects, it joins the picture to the wall. So summarizing, we see a lot of wisdom in the letter Aleph, hinted to us through Hashem, through the shape, through the value, through the name, and through this we can learn a lot. Bezrat Hashem will continue with the other alphabets, and this limud will be a chizuk for all of us. Thank you for listening.